Relaxed, crossing the arms, you're doing the give yourself a hug cross. Don't do crisscross. If you do crisscross this way, you're going to take up too much of the slack in the shoulder girdle. One hand over the other. It doesn't matter which hand goes on top, whichever is more comfortable for the patient. When they get here, cross your arms. So immediately they're going to go to crisscross, even though you explain it. Everybody does it. Okay? So then you say, oh, just give yourself a hug, because you're doing such a great job. Okay. Now, push here. Is that okay on your shoulders? Yes. If it's not, switch. Okay? You see whichever one they like. It shouldn't matter. I actually like the other ones. Okay? If you have any history with your shoulders, any history of rotator cuff tears, dislocations. Okay? If they have a multi-directional instability in their shoulder, especially if it's a posterior direction instability, this is probably not going to be the best thing to do. You can get around it, but you may not want to do this technique. Okay? So I have him here, and remember, we're positioning more in the Diane Lee way. This is more the Norwegian and osteopathic way. Come sit up for me. Come sit up, and rolling down, and crack. Okay? Absolutely nothing wrong with that technique. It's just that you have to be able to control the body. So we're starting with the Diane Lee technique, where you quarter turn towards the person. Okay? You log roll, because usually you're dealing with some sort of rotation thing. So if you do this, that's not going to be so comfortable. So you just put your thighs against the table, so you're a bed rail. Just log roll towards me. Find your segment of interest, which you've already figured out. Okay? And then you find that segment, and you're going to be on the same segment with your pistol grip of the lower. Okay? Find the same segment of pistol grip of lower. Then you're going to start to flex them down. If they're a bilateral flexion restriction, you're flexing them. If they're a bilateral extension restriction, you're extending them, just so you partially take up the slack. Then you say, you can use a hip check, bring your knees up tall. Okay, see what I did? Okay, log roll towards me. Okay, I want you to just bring your knees up tall, just like that. That gets them in position. Quarter turn back. I've taken up for him I'm doing extension, so I've taken up the extension slack. We shifted over because of the tables. Did we were put in another room that I guess didn't have tables?
Yeah, but then I just found out with maintenance you could have been in your room.
Oh, great.
So that's why I'm like going on like, what?
Now, I came out of it because I don't want to just sit here and have his body weight on my hand for too long. All right, that's why manipulation tends to be a nicer technique. It's quick. All right, so I log roll him towards me. I find the segment. I flex to the level or extend. I'm partially taking up the slack. I roll him back onto my hand. I've taken up the slack more. So now I'm going to extend him a little bit more. I hug him up by doing this. I now have control. Okay? And now I'm going to do two things. If you've already stress tested him in a posterior direction, you're fine. If not, you need to stress test him here. How am I going to stress test him in a posterior direction here?
Push up.
Push which direction?
Push up with your left arm and down with your right.
Which direction?
Bottom arm moving toward the ceiling.
So as far as the segment is concerned, what is that? That's correct. Yeah, it's a posterior shear of the upper segment. So I come in here. I do a straight posterior shear. I should feel it stiffen up. I shouldn't feel any movement. And I just hold for a few seconds. You okay? And back off.
You were giving an upward force with the bottom hand?
Yeah, counter force. So I'm giving a counter force here, and then I'm doing a posterior shear from above. That's your stress test. The first thing you're feeling for is a neutral zone. If there feels like there's a large neutral zone play, then Punjabi will say that's an example of posterior instability. Then I'm feeling for an end feel when I get to the end. If it feels like the body goes into spasm, or it feels like it's that nauseating keeps going, then I have a posterior instability. You don't want to do this technique. Okay? Second thing you're going to do, pre-manipulative hold. Okay? So the stress test is different than the pre-manipulative hold. This is the pre-manipulative hold. I'm doing an extension bias technique. As I come in, this table's too high. I'm doing this. Why am I doing this? What am I going for on my pre-manipulative hold?
No pain at end range.
Pain at end range. What'd you say? End range.
Spasm.
What spasm? What kind of end range am I going for?
Capsular.
Maybe, but what am I thinking of? What am I taking him into to do the pre-manipulative hold?
Stage 4 mode.
6, 7, 8. I'm going way past it. I'm essentially thinking if I thrust and I overmove him, what direction might I overmove him into? And it's going to be extension and that shearing in that direction. Okay? So the difference between the stress test and the pre-manipulative hold is the stress test is a straight posterior shear. And I should feel it tighten up and no give. The pre-manipulative hold, I go past extension, past an area that I might accidentally go. All right? And how long do you have them hold the pre-manipulative hold? 10 seconds. And then you're trying to feel for any symptoms that are being reproduced. It may be a little bit uncomfortable, especially if you're on a stuck segment. But you're really looking for spasm, and you're looking for any other cord signs or anything. If they start getting light tingling, then you know that's bad. Okay? So I go through here. You have to play around with this. If you get too far, you okay? Any leg symptoms? Okay. So then I'm clear with the stress test, clear with the pre-manipulative hold. Give your hand a break. When you come in, you wind up that pistol grip, stabilize right here, quarter turn back, hug them down. Okay, you okay? Let me take a deep breath in and out. Okay, and it's in that direction. So you're getting, and I biased him into extension, which most people need an extension bias. But assess your patient if you want to do a flexion or extension bias. So when you come down, you bias into extension, you take up the slack. Don't go beyond the slack or you have no room to thrust. And then your thrust is in this diagonal direction. A little bit posterior, a little bit superior, so you get that distraction. You bias them into extension, so it's a distraction extension technique. Okay? So right now, what you're going to do, you're going to position your patient, log, roll them towards you, figure out which segment you want to do. Straight, shear, stress test. Okay? Come out of it. Go back in, pre-manipulative hold, come out of it, shake your hand out, localize it up. When you're all fine, deep breath in and out, thrust.